Welcome to Study Loop.
Today we're going to have a look at the differences between a physical process and a chemical process. The biggest difference that you need to know between these two processes is that physical is temporary and chemical is permanent. And as the name suggests, a physical process is when a substance undergoes a physical change. So changes occur to the physical properties of a substance, such as the shape or size. In chemical reactions, the individual molecules can break apart and form different molecules, so new substances can form. But in physical processes, the individual molecules do not change, so the substance types can remain the same. In chemical processes, you may see changes such as color changes, for example. In physical reactions, you can see changes such as shape, for example. Another big difference between the two is that physical changes do not involve the production of energy, but chemical changes, obviously, they involve the production of energy, which can be in the form of heat or light, for example. Sorry, no production of energy, and this produces energy. And again, just to reiterate, physical processes are easily reversible. That's why they're temporary. The original substance can be recovered. But in chemical processes, it's irreversible, so it's permanent and the original substance cannot be recovered. Now, let's apply this knowledge. Okay, so starting off with rusting of iron, we're looking at a metal can which we are going to assume is made of iron, right? And what happens during rusting? Iron reacts with oxygen to form iron oxide, and rusting is obviously a permanent process. So we know that we can say that rusting of a metal can is a chemical change or process. Moving on to boiling a cup of water, what is happening when you're boiling water? You're increasing the temperature. It's just a physical change because it is a temporary process. If you stop boiling the cup of water, obviously it will cool down and condense after and form liquid again. So when you boil a cup of water, you're increasing temperature, it forms steam, but then when you stop boiling it, it will cool down, condense, and form liquid again. So it is a temporary process and it is reversible. So we can say that it's a physical change or process. Moving on to pulverizing an aspirin, I want I encourage you to pause the video and think about this one. Pulverizing just means breaking down or crushing or grinding. So in this case, we would be taking an aspirin pill and just crushing and grinding it. And this would be a physical change because the individual molecules are not changing itself. You're just changing the shape. You're breaking down the pill into smaller pieces. The substance type itself would be the same. So we're going to say that this is a physical change. Moving on to digesting a candy bar, what happens during digestion? It's the breakdown of the candy bar, right? Your stomach would be using the acid and the low pH to break down that candy bar into glucose, into some kind of molecule that the body can use as energy. So, in this case, we would see that the individual molecules are breaking apart and they're forming into different molecules, which in this case we could say is sugar slash glucose for energy, and it's a permanent change. We cannot get that candy bar back. So in this case, we would say that Candy bar is a chemical process. Also, not to mention the enzymes in your saliva breaking down that candy bar when you're chewing it in your mouth. Moving on to the explosion of nitroglycerin, it is extremely sensitive to shock and to rapid heating, so it is very easy to explode. But what happens when nitroglycerin actually explodes? It is obviously going to be a chemical change because it's an irreversible process. Once that nitroglycerin explodes, you cannot get it back. The individual molecules have broken apart and they form different molecules. New substances will be formed. You might even see color changes. So, in this case, we will say that uh, exploding of nitroglycerin would be a chemical process. Even though it requires physical factors to cause it to explode, such as pressure or heat, we would say that once the nitroglycerin explodes, it's a chemical process.